Have you ever returned something valuable and nobody even said thank you? Imagine this. A poor cleaner finds a wallet stuffed with cash. Her mother is sick. Her daughter is out of school. The landlord is threatening to throw them out. She could take the money and nobody would ever know. Instead, she returns the wallet. No reward, no recognition. Only insults, suspicion, and more suffering. But what she didn't know was this. Someone was watching. Someone powerful. And that one honest decision was about to drag her name from the basement to the lobby where a billionaire would kneel in front of her. Now let's go back to where it all began. She thought returning the wallet was nothing until the convoy returned for her. 3 black SUVs rolled into the corporate plaza with deliberate precision, their polished surfaces gleaming under the afternoon sun. Men in dark suits emerged, their presence commanding immediate attention. Security guards straightened, office workers pressed against the glass windows, murmuring in confusion. The vehicles stopped directly in front of the main entrance, engines purring with restrained power. Then he stepped out. A man in his late 40s, impeccably dressed, his face carrying authority, softened by vulnerability. In his hand he clutched a small purple keychain as though it were made of gold. His eyes swept the building, searching for someone specific. His voice cut through the confused murmurs with clarity and purpose. "Where is the cleaner who returned my wallet?" The question froze the entire building. Staff exchanged bewildered glances. Security personnel stood at attention. Somewhere in the crowd, a supervisor's face went pale. The powerful man had arrived with a convoy to ask about a cleaner. Someone invisible. Someone no one remembered or acknowledged. To understand why a simple poor cleaner brought a billionaire to his knees, we must go back to the beginning of a story that started not with wealth, but with poverty so deep it felt like drowning. Miriam woke at 4 every morning, to darkness and dread. Her alarm buzzed insistently, pulling her from brief escape into harsh reality. She lay on a thin foam mattress, compressed to nothing, in a single room of a Face Me, I Face You building where privacy was myth and dignity memory. The walls were stained, the roof leaked in 3 places, buckets positioned beneath them with practiced precision. Through thin partitions, she heard neighbors coughing and arguing as clearly as if they shared the room. She sat up carefully, avoiding her daughter Lara, who slept beside her. The 11-year-old girl was small for her age, her face carrying premature seriousness that broke Miriam's heart daily. In the corner behind a curtain, her mother lay on a low platform, breathing shallowly. 6 months after her stroke, the older woman remained partially paralyzed, unable to speak clearly, her left side useless. Medical bills had consumed every saving, every favor, every loan Miriam could beg. Miriam moved through her routine with practiced efficiency. Cold water from a jerry can shocked her awake. Her reflection showed a woman older than 38 years, exhausted beyond measure. She dressed in her pale blue uniform, faded from too many washings, but always clean. Her shoes had holes in the soles covered with cardboard that dissolved in rain. Before leaving, she checked her mother, taking the older woman's good hand. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, apologizing again for being a burden. "Things will be better someday," Miriam whispered, the same promise repeated like prayer, even as evidence mounted against it. She kissed her mother's forehead and her sleeping daughter's head, gathered her small bag, and stepped into pre-dawn darkness. The journey to work required 2 buses and over an hour, beginning before sunrise and ending as office workers arrived. She stood with other domestic workers and cleaners at the bus stop, too tired for conversation, too resigned to complain about unreliable transportation and daily indignity. The corporate building towered 30 floors above Lagos, a monument to success built on labor no one noticed. Miriam entered through the service entrance, descending to the basement where cleaning staff gathered. The space was cramped and poorly lit, dominated by Madame Kemi's glass-walled office positioned for maximum surveillance. Madame Kemi had climbed from poverty into lower management and responded by developing contempt for those still struggling. Heavy-set and permanently disapproving, she dressed in cheap corporate imitations and wielded her authority with cruelty. "You are late again," she announced before Miriam reached her locker. Miriam was 3 minutes early, but correcting the supervisor was futile. She murmured an apology she didn't owe. "Your uniform is looking rough," Madame Kemi continued loudly. "Maybe we need to deduct something from your salary for replacement." The threat hung heavy. Miriam's salary barely covered rent and food. Further deductions meant catastrophe. She nodded mutely, adding this humiliation to the weight she carried. Other cleaners avoided eye contact, grateful the target wasn't them, knowing it could be tomorrow. Miriam's assignment was the executive floors, 3 levels of offices housing senior management who earned more in a month than she would in 5 years. She gathered her supplies, the mop handle loose and wobbling, equipment broken but functional enough. The service elevator carried her up in chemical-smelling silence. Office workers moved past without acknowledgement, their eyes sliding over her as though she were furniture. She had become invisible through familiarity, her presence expected but unrecognized. She cleaned toilets first, scrubbing until they gleamed, her back screaming in protest. In hallways, she mopped floors already spotless, pressing herself against walls when staff walked past without adjusting their pace. In offices, she emptied bins and wiped desks, seeing remnants of corporate life, photographs of children in uniforms that cost more than her monthly rent. If this touched you already, comment "I'm watching" to show you're here. Madame Kemi made rounds throughout the day, inspecting Miriam's work with intensity designed to find mistakes. "You call this clean?" she demanded once, pointing at an invisible mark. "This is why you people cannot progress." No attention to detail. Office workers paused to observe, confirming the hierarchy where Miriam existed at the very bottom. She absorbed these moments, swallowed them with hunger and exhaustion and pain, storing them where her daughter would never see. At home, she smiled and made games of poverty, praised Laura's intelligence, promised education would lift them out. She lied with love, constructing hope she desperately wanted to believe. She worked 2 shifts because one didn't pay enough to survive. Between shifts, she sat on concrete steps eating small portions of rice, then clocked back in for afternoons stretching into evening. Before each shift, she prayed quietly, desperately, for strength to continue, for her mother's healing, for some break in the clouds over her life. One evening, as the building emptied, Miriam pushed her cart onto the executive floor for final cleaning. Most staff had left. The few remaining worked behind closed doors. Hallways were silent except for squeaking wheels and distant air conditioning hum. She worked methodically through empty offices. In a corner conference room, she emptied bins and wiped the long table. She was turning to leave when something caught her eye. On the side table, partially hidden beneath folders, lay a designer wallet. The leather was impossibly soft, the brand name embossed in gold. She approached slowly, glancing around. The floor remained empty. She picked it up and opened it slightly to check for identification. What she saw made her breath catch. Cash bundles, international bank cards, a driver's license with a photo of upper management, and tucked in a clear window, a photograph of a young girl, perhaps 9 years old, smiling with unself-conscious joy. Miriam stood frozen, heart pounding. She thought of her mother lying helpless, medicines running out, hospitals refusing treatment without payment. She thought of her daughter sent home from school yesterday, unable to take exams without fee payment. She thought of the landlord threatening eviction if she didn't produce 3 months' back rent by Friday. The money in this wallet could solve every immediate problem. She could take some, leave the cards, make it look like someone else. Who would know? Who would suspect the invisible cleaner? Her hands trembled as temptation and integrity warred inside her. She had been honest her entire life, and where had it gotten her? Poverty, humiliation, exhaustion. What had integrity earned except more suffering? But even as desperation crowded her mind, she knew she couldn't do it. Couldn't steal. Couldn't betray the values her mother had instilled despite their poverty. Couldn't become someone who took what didn't belong to them. If she stole, even with justification, she would have to explain it to her daughter someday and see disappointment in Lara's eyes. She closed the wallet carefully and left the conference room. The security desk was on the ground floor, manned by 2 guards watching football highlights. "I found this in an executive office," she said, placing the wallet between them. They looked up in surprise, then something harder. One picked it up, saw the cash, and whistled low. "You returned this?" he asked incredulously. "You know even remove small? Nobody would know." The other guard shook his head in mock sympathy. "Too honest for your own good. This is why you will remain a cleaner forever. Rich people don't get rich by being honest." She filled out the logbook, writing carefully in neat handwriting. The guards continued teasing, their words carrying genuine contempt mixed with pity. She ignored them, completing paperwork properly so there could be no questions later. When she returned upstairs, she felt hollowed out. She had done the right thing. She knew it. But the right thing felt like punishment for being good in a world that didn't reward goodness. The next day, word spread through the building. Staff who normally ignored Miriam now stared with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. In the break room, secretaries discussed it, voices low but audible. "I heard she found money and just turned it in. Seems suspicious. Maybe she took some first." Miriam continued working, face burning, hands moving automatically. Madame Kemi summoned her before lunch. "So you are the one who found the big man's wallet," the supervisor began, tone making clear this wasn't a question. "Very noble. But how do we know you didn't remove money first? The guards said it was full. But how do we know? Were they there when you found it?" The interrogation continued, each question designed to undermine Miriam's credibility, to sow doubt about her integrity among watching staff. Madame Kemi threatened to report her for potential theft, claimed she had always suspected dishonesty, suggested a full investigation was necessary. The accusations were baseless but damaging, transforming honesty into evidence of guilt. Miriam didn't cry during the berating. She stood with head bowed, accepting abuse as she had learned to accept all abuse. Only later, in a restroom stall on a floor already cleaned, did she allow silent sobs while pressing her hand over her mouth. That same morning, the wallet's owner arrived early. He came before most staff settled, moving through the lobby with purpose. At security, he identified himself and received the wallet, checking contents briefly before nodding. The guards mentioned the cleaner who returned it, joking about her stupidity in not taking anything. He didn't share their amusement. He asked which cleaner specifically, asked for her name and employee number, asked to see CCTV footage. The guards complied, confused by his intensity. He stood at the desk for 15 minutes, watching grainy footage of Miriam's hesitation, her visible internal struggle, her trembling hands examining contents before closing the wallet and bringing it downstairs. He watched it 3 times, expression unreadable. He left without fanfare, saying nothing about reward or gratitude. The guards shrugged and returned to their phones. Life continued as normal. Miriam remained invisible. Everything went back to the way it had always been, except it hadn't. Because while Miriam scrubbed floors and her supervisor spread poison, the man with the wallet had begun making inquiries. Quiet questions to the right people, research through channels unavailable to most, a growing understanding of exactly who Miriam was and what her honesty had cost her. If you're still watching, comment, stay strong. The breaking point came 3 days later, not as one catastrophic event, but as convergence of disasters striking simultaneously. Miriam woke to her mother's breathing having worsened overnight, each inhale rattling with fluid and failing organs. Something was badly wrong, and without immediate medical intervention, her mother wouldn't survive the week. She dressed her mother with trembling hands and half-carried her to the main road, flagging a commercial taxi. The driver demanded double fare, knowing desperation left no room for negotiation. At the hospital, they were turned away at reception. No admission without deposit, no exceptions. The receptionist delivered this without looking up, unmoved by tears or deteriorating condition. The amount required was 3 times Miriam's monthly salary, due immediately. She begged, explaining her mother would die, promising installment payments, offering to work at the hospital for free. The receptionist remained unmoved, repeating policy with mechanical efficiency. Money was required. No suffering changed the rules. Miriam sat in the waiting area with her mother, leaning heavily against her. Breathing becoming more labored, she made calls to everyone she knew. Each conversation ended the same. Apologies and sympathy, but no money. Wishes for recovery, but no practical assistance. When she finally accepted no help was coming, she gathered her mother and made the journey home in defeated silence. Her mother cried, apologizing again, saying she should just die and stop being a burden. Miriam held her mother's good hand and said nothing because there was nothing to say that wouldn't be another empty promise. She returned home to find Lara sitting outside their locked room, small and miserable. Her daughter had been sent home from school again, this time with a letter suspending her until full payment of fees was received. The end-of-term tests determining her advancement would happen in 1 week, and without taking them, Lara would be held back a year, her academic progress halted by poverty. Miriam read the letter 3 times, words blurring through tears she couldn't control. Her daughter watched with resignation that broke Miriam's heart. Lara had learned not to ask for things, not to express disappointment, not to add her grief to her mother's burden. She sat quietly while Miriam wept, then put her small hand on her mother's arm and said it was okay. She could help with cleaning instead of school. School wasn't that important anyway. The words destroyed something inside Miriam. Her daughter shouldn't comfort her. Her daughter shouldn't offer to leave school. Her daughter should worry about homework and friends, not survival and bills. The final blow landed that evening. The landlord arrived as she prepared Gary for dinner, banging on the door with aggression. He was flanked by 2 men, their presence making his intent clear. "Friday," he announced. "You have until Friday to give me all the back rent, or I will remove your belongings and change this lock. There are 10 people waiting for this room who can pay." She stood in the doorway after he left, staring at nothing. Friday was 3 days away. 3 days to produce money she didn't have, couldn't obtain, couldn't imagine acquiring. 3 days before they would be on the street. That night, after her mother and daughter slept, Miriam sat against the wall and broke completely. She cried without restraint, body shaking with sobs from someplace so deep she hadn't known it existed. She cried for unfairness, for a world where working 2 jobs wasn't enough, where honesty earned mockery instead of respect, where doing everything right still resulted in losing everything. She prayed with desperation bordering on anger, demanding answers from a God who seemed absent. What more could she do? How much more could she sacrifice? She worked until her body screamed, maintained integrity when stealing would have been easier, loved her family and tried to provide with inadequate resources. And still it wasn't enough. When dawn came, she dragged herself through another day. She woke Lara and helped her dress, though her daughter had nowhere to go. She tended her mother, administering the last medications they had. She dressed in her uniform and prepared for work, because not going meant losing even insufficient income, and staying home meant confronting reality with no escape. Friday arrived too quickly and too slowly, each hour rushing toward catastrophe while crawling with dread. Miriam had made inquiries about shelters, about relatives who might help, about any option to keep her family off the street. Every avenue led to dead ends. Shelters were full. Relatives had their own struggles. Friends offered sympathy, but not space. She went to work knowing it would likely be her last day in the room that had been home for 3 years. The landlord wasn't bluffing. She had seen him evict others, belongings piled in corridors, while new tenants moved in. Money or departure. Those were the only options. She was cleaning the executive floor, pushing her cart down the empty hallway in early afternoon when sound reached her from outside. A commotion of voices and movement unusual for midday. She ignored it initially, focused on work, but the noise grew louder. Impossible to dismiss. Staff rushed to windows, pressing against glass, pointing and exclaiming. Miriam approached slowly, natural inclination to avoid attention warring with curiosity. What she saw made no sense. 3 black SUVs parked in the plaza, arranged in formation suggesting official business. Men in dark suits stood beside them, scanning with professional vigilance. Security guards gathered, their casual demeanor replaced by rigid attention. Office workers streamed out to see what was happening. Then the center SUV's door opened and a man stepped out. Even from 30 floors up, his presence commanded attention, made everyone adjust their posture. He stood looking up at the building, holding something small in his hand, clutching it with careful reverence. The crowd parted as he moved toward the entrance. Security rushing to open doors, staff whispering about who he was and what he wanted. Miriam watched from above, unable to imagine this had anything to do with her. Important people arrived regularly. This was just another day in a world she served, but didn't belong to. Then the announcement came over the intercom, crackling through speakers in every hallway. All staff report to the main lobby immediately. This is a mandatory assembly. All staff to the main lobby now. Cleaning staff exchanged confused glances. Mandatory assemblies were rare, and usually meant bad news. Madame Kemi appeared, barking orders and herding subordinates toward the service elevator. They descended in crowded silence, wondering what disaster awaited below. The lobby was chaos. Every employee had gathered, hundreds of people filling the vast space, all focused on the center where the man from the SUV stood waiting. Up close, Miriam could see him clearly. Late 40s, impeccably dressed, his face carrying success and sorrow. In his right hand, he held a purple keychain, small and cheap and familiar. Her heart began racing. That keychain. She had seen it before, attached to the designer wallet, the wallet she had found and returned. The wallet whose return had earned nothing but mockery and accusation. His eyes swept the crowd methodically, searching for someone specific. Security positioned themselves around him deferentially, making clear he was someone important. Staff whispered furiously, speculating about his identity. His voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "Where is the cleaner who returned my wallet?" Each word was distinct and weighted with emotion. "Where is Miriam?" The crowd parted instinctively, heads turning, eyes searching, finding her at the back with other cleaning staff. Hands pointed. Voices murmured her name. The invisible woman suddenly visible, thrust into focus by attention that couldn't be dismissed. She felt hundreds of eyes pressing down like physical force. Madame Kimi's face went pale, confidence evaporating as understanding dawned. She tried to step forward, to insert herself into the situation, but his gaze swept past her without acknowledgement. "Come forward, please," he said, voice gentler now, directed at Miriam specifically. The crowd parted further, creating a path 30 feet long that felt like 30 miles. She walked forward on trembling legs, heart pounding, mind racing through possibilities that made no sense. She stopped a few feet away, head bowed, hands clasped, unable to meet his gaze because nothing had prepared her for this moment, for being the center of attention, for standing before someone powerful while hundreds watched. He studied her for a long moment, expression complex. Then slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself to one knee before her. The crowd gasped collectively. This man, whoever he was, had just genuflected before a poor cleaner in a faded uniform and broken shoes. "I need to explain something to you," he began, voice carrying clearly. "My name is Adewale Hassan. 3 weeks ago, you found and returned my wallet. You don't know me. We've never met. You returned it because it was the right thing to do. But I need you to understand what you actually returned to me." He held up the purple keychain. "This wallet belonged to my wife. She died 2 years ago suddenly from an illness we didn't know she had. She left behind our 9-year-old daughter who lost her mother when she most needed her. This keychain was a gift from our daughter to her mother. It cost nothing, but my wife carried it everywhere." He paused, composing himself, eyes glistening. "When my wife died, I kept her wallet exactly as it was. I carried it because it made me feel closer to her, because my daughter would ask to see it and hold it and remember her mother through this object. Inside is the only photograph my daughter has where she is with her mother, just the two of them, taken a month before she died. Without it, all she has are fading recollections. I was careless. I left it in a conference room. When security told me a cleaner returned it, when they showed me CCTV footage of you finding it, I saw something that shocked me. You opened it. You saw the money. I watched you hesitate, watched you struggle. Then you closed it and brought it downstairs without taking a single bill." He looked up at her now, meeting her eyes directly, crying openly. "Do you understand what you saved? You saved my daughter's last connection to her mother. You saved the only photograph she has. You gave back something irreplaceable that no amount of money could have replaced, and you did it despite clearly needing that money yourself." The lobby remained silent, transfixed by raw emotion, by a powerful man on his knees before a poor cleaner, by revelation that simple honesty had been something far more profound. "I made inquiries," he continued. "I learned about your situation, your sick mother, your daughter out of school, your landlord threatening eviction. I learned how you were treated here, how your supervisor accused you of theft after you returned my wallet, how you worked 2 shifts to try to survive. I watched more CCTV footage and saw how staff treat you, how you're invisible to them, how you endure disrespect without complaint." He stood now, still holding the keychain, addressing the crowd as much as Miriam. "This woman had opportunity to steal from me and chose not to. She had every reason to take that money and valid justification. She was desperate. Her family was suffering. She could have taken it and I would never have known. But she didn't. She chose integrity over survival. How many of us can say we would have made the same choice?" The question hung unanswered because the answer was obvious, in dropped gazes and uncomfortable shifting. Very few would have returned a wallet full of cash when desperately needing money. He turned back to Miriam. "I cannot give you back the weeks you've suffered. I cannot undo the pain or fear. But I can change what happens from this moment forward." He gestured to an assistant who produced documents. "This is confirmation of payment for your mother's complete medical treatment. I've already spoken with the hospital. Your mother will be admitted today, treated by the best doctors, provided all medications and therapy until fully recovered. You will pay nothing." Miriam's hands shook holding the paper, unable to process what she was hearing. He continued, handing her another document. "This is the deed to a 3-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood. It's furnished, paid for, registered in your name. You will never worry about eviction again." Another document. "This is confirmation of a full scholarship for your daughter covering all expenses through university. She returns to school Monday and will never be sent home for unpaid fees again." Miriam couldn't speak, couldn't form words, could barely stand. But he wasn't finished. "This is a business license and initial funding for a cleaning company. You will own it. I'm providing startup capital, equipment, contracts with corporate clients, including my companies. You won't clean for others anymore. You will employ people. You will run the business. You will never kneel before anyone or endure disrespect or work yourself to exhaustion for poverty wages ever again. The lobby erupted in murmurs, staff stunned by the transformation of a poor cleaner into a business owner in minutes. Madame Kemi stood frozen, horror dawning as she understood implications of her treatment of Miriam. Adewale turned to face the supervisor. I watched CCTV footage extensively. I saw how you treated this woman. Your accusations, your public humiliation, your theft of wages through unjust deductions. You are terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises. You will not receive severance. And I will ensure every company in my network knows exactly why you were fired. Security moved forward, not roughly, but firmly. Madame Kemi was walked toward the exit while the crowd watched in stunned silence. Her humiliation complete, reversal so total it felt biblical. Adewale turned back to Miriam. Your honesty changed everything, not just for me and my daughter, but for yourself. You proved integrity still exists, that some people still choose right over easy. You gave me back something irreplaceable, and now I'm giving you back your life. Not as charity, but as gratitude. You earned this. Miriam finally found her voice, barely a whisper. Thank you. She repeated it like a prayer, unable to express the enormity of what she felt. He smiled, genuine warmth breaking through formality. Your mother's ambulance is waiting outside. My staff will help you pack and move to your new home today. You start Monday at the hospital with your mother, not here. Take time with your family, rest, heal. When you're ready, we'll begin setting up your company. I have managers who will help you learn the business side. He extended his hand and she took it. Rough work-worn hand enveloped in his smooth one, the touch of equals despite vast difference in circumstances. The crowd burst into applause, staff who had ignored her for years suddenly celebrating her transformation. As Adewale prepared to leave, his daughter emerged from one of the SUVs, a small girl with her mother's eyes and her father's serious expression. She walked directly to Miriam and hugged her without speaking, small arms tight around the cleaner's waist. Thank you for bringing my mama's wallet back, the girl whispered. My daddy says you're a hero. Miriam knelt to the child's level, seeing the daughter from the photograph, older but still carrying grief. She hugged the girl properly and whispered back that she was brave and strong, and her mother would be proud. The rest of that day passed in organized chaos. Ambulance personnel transported her mother to the private hospital where treatment had been arranged. Her mother held Miriam's hand during the ride, unable to speak through tears, but communicating everything through touch. Lara bounced with excitement, asking about the new apartment, about returning to school, about whether Grandma would really get better. Staff from Adewale's company arrived at the Face Me, I Face You building with professional movers, treating Miriam's possessions with care. The landlord watched in stunned silence, his threats forgotten, trying too late to congratulate her. She ignored him, feeling only relief at leaving behind a place representing nothing but struggle. The new apartment was in a clean, quiet neighborhood. 3 bedrooms meant privacy and space. Furniture gleamed unused and new. Lara ran from space to space, marveling at having her own room, at the kitchen with a full-sized refrigerator, at the bathroom with hot water. Her joy was infectious and heartbreaking. That night, alone in her own room for the first time in her adult life, Miriam lay in a real bed and cried. But these tears were different. These were tears of release, of disbelief, of overwhelming gratitude bordering on religious experience. She had been tested at her breaking point and had chosen integrity over survival. And somehow, impossibly, miraculously, that choice had been rewarded beyond imagination. 1 year later, the transformation was complete. Miriam's mother had recovered beyond predictions. Physical therapy and proper medication allowing her to walk again, with slight limp, to speak clearly, to regain independence. She lived in the third bedroom, helping care for Lara when Miriam was at work, her days filled with purpose instead of pain. Lara thrived in her new school, making up for lost time. Her grades were excellent, confidence growing, dreams expanding beyond narrow horizons poverty had imposed. She talked about becoming a doctor or lawyer, about helping people the way her mother had been helped. Miriam's cleaning company had grown beyond expectations, employing 15 women within 6 months, all who had struggled as she had. She paid them fairly, treated them with respect, created a work environment where dignity was default. Her contracts with corporate clients were secure and expanding, her business sustainable and profitable. She no longer cleaned offices herself, though sometimes joined employees on jobs to remember where she came from and ensure she never forgot what being invisible felt like. She managed from a small office, learning accounting and marketing and client relations with consultants Adewale provided. She discovered talent for organization and leadership. Skills poverty had suppressed but not destroyed. Her staff wore proper uniforms, worked with quality equipment, received benefits, and respect. She had created the working conditions she had dreamed of during dark mornings of 2 shifts and exploitation. In creating those conditions for others, she had healed something in herself, transformed suffering into purpose, struggle into strength. Adewale and his daughter had become family in the way chosen family sometimes feels more real than biological connections. They visited regularly, sharing meals and holidays, boundaries between employer and employee dissolving into genuine friendship. His daughter called her Auntie Mariam and played with Lara like sisters. On the anniversary of the day Adewale arrived in his convoy, Mariam closed her office early and went to the corporate building where she had worked as a cleaner. She stood in the plaza looking up at the glass tower, remembering the woman she had been, invisible and exploited, and one emergency from homelessness. That woman felt like a stranger now, but Mariam never wanted to forget her completely. She wanted to remember that struggle and that choice, and that moment when everything changed because she had chosen integrity over survival. The moral of her story was simple and ancient and true. Integrity was doing the right thing even when it hurt, even when it cost you, even when no one would know if you did wrong. Kindness always returned, though perhaps not immediately, perhaps not in ways expected, perhaps not in proportion to sacrifice made, but it returned. And one honest act, one moment of choosing character over comfort, could rewrite your entire destiny. She had been tested at her breaking point and had passed a test she hadn't known she was taking. She had saved a stranger's most precious possession while sacrificing her own survival. And that stranger had responded not with casual thanks, but with transformative generosity of someone who understood exactly what her honesty had cost and what it revealed about her character. The world didn't always reward goodness. Miriam knew that. She had lived that truth for 38 years before her life changed. But sometimes, rarely enough to feel miraculous, integrity was recognized and rewarded. Sometimes choosing right over easy opened doors that seemed permanently locked. Sometimes the universe bent toward justice in ways that felt like grace. If you watched till the end, comment, "I choose honesty." Hit the like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs hope today. Because hope is not naive optimism or blind faith. Hope is the belief that goodness matters, that choices have consequences, that integrity is its own reward even when reward is delayed or invisible. Hope is what kept Miriam cleaning toilets with dignity while her world fell apart. Hope is what made her return the wallet when taking from it would have solved immediate problems. Hope is what sustained her through mockery and accusation and breaking points that should have broken her, but somehow didn't. And hope, in the end, was vindicated. Not because the universe guarantees fairness or rewards virtue automatically, but because sometimes, just often enough to matter, choosing integrity over expediency opens paths that would have remained forever closed if values had been compromised for immediate relief. Sometimes the right thing is also the wise thing, even when wisdom takes time to reveal itself. Sometimes heroes are not people who perform grand gestures, but people who make quiet choices that cost them everything and define who they really are when no one important is watching. If you watch till the end, comment, "I choose honesty." Like, subscribe, and share. Not because this story guarantees honesty will make you rich or solve all problems, but because choosing integrity, regardless of outcome, is how we maintain our humanity in a world that constantly tempts us to compromise it. Because being honest when it costs you everything is how you prove to yourself who you really are. And because sometimes, just sometimes, that proof is witnessed by someone with power to transform your life, and your moment of private integrity becomes your public redemption. If this story touched your heart, I want to know. If you watched till the end, comment, "I choose honesty." Like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Because sometimes the smallest act of integrity, one quiet choice no one sees, can open doors no one believes exist.